How's it going, pals? This week I wanted to look at amplitude modulation and all the fun things you can do with it, because you think that you know about amplitude modulation, it's just modulating volume, but in modular I feel like there's a lot that you can do with that concept to affect various sounds. So I have a pretty extensive patch here, but ultimately, it's actually quite simple. So up the top here, we've just got a clock from Sikazel. I don't know if I've used this clock before, but it's pretty cool. Going into a trig sequencer, which is then gating these 4 step sequences, all of which are going into a quantizer, and then they're going into this instruo module, which is called Sach or Psych, or however you say that. But it's basically a 4 oscillator. It's a 4 oscillator, ideal for pads, I would say. And then that's going into this ADSR/VCA, and then that's going into this filter here. Bit of chorus and a bit of reverb. And let's listen to what it sounds like. Let's bring the volume up a little bit. It's just 2 chords. I was going to add more, but these chords are quite nice, just cycling. And that's not really the point of this video. So just going to bring that filter down a touch. So down here I have several different examples of amplitude modulation, and they're all going to take this audio signal from this pad up the top, and they're going to modulate it after the reverb. So we've got a drenched reverb over here, and they're all going to flow into these other patches with that reverb. So let's mute that, and let's check out this second patch. So what we've got here is a pretty simple example of amplitude modulation. We've got a trigger sequencer, we've got an attack decay, we've got a little bit of debriatus just to give us some grit and some saturation, and we've got this VCA here from Sikazel. Got some delay, of course, a little bit of filtering, but that's besides the point. The main point is attack decay, trigger sequencer. If we bring up a scope and we go out of our attack decay, we can see what we're doing. And this is just like the most basic example of what you can do here. But it is a fun example because this kind of gated sequencing is extremely useful in dance music, lots of music, honestly. But I mainly set this up, this is the most basic version of it, to demonstrate what we're going to be doing for the rest of these patches. So let's just mute that. And let's go down here where we've got a slightly different, perhaps more interesting example. So in this case, I'm modulating the amplitude with noise. And we get this gritty kind of texture on the pad, which I think is quite intriguing and interesting. And if we bring the reverb up over here, we get a deeper sound. But let's just turn the reverb off for a second, because we've got the noise on the scope here, and the quality of the noise is going to drastically change our sound as it modulates the volume. So let's play with this cutoff for a start. Let's bring the resonance up. So it's pretty wild already. But we can change noise types and get very different sounds. And on the scope you can see how different the noise is. And again, if we listen to the original pad, it doesn't sound that different, but we've just got this warbly, crunchy grit kind of laid over the top of it. And if we filter it, the quality of the noise changes quite a lot, as you can see on the scope, and that further changes our modulation. So heavy filtering, we just get a little bit of modulation. I'm also using an offset and a scale here, so we can change the amplitude of the noise and the position of it, which is going to help us when we turn down the filter, for example. The offset's going to change where the noise floor is. Well, you barely get anything down there. I just think it's a really unique sound. Particularly like it on this number 2 here with some heavy filtering. Can filter the output a bit as well. Bring the reverb back up. So I really like that as a use case for amplitude modulation. I remember the first time I discovered this as a technique was one of the tutorial videos for the Access virus, probably back in 2012. And forever since then, I've been kind of interested in this idea. Some of you may remember Ben Crosland, I believe, was the product demonstration guy for Access at that time. He had a bunch of cool tutorial videos, which I really enjoyed back then. But let's move on to our next example. We have a clock divider, we've got a switch, both from Count Modular, and we've got a gate to trig module. So we just get the start of the gate. And what that does is we're basically just randomly switching between different clock divisions. You can see on the scope, we get pretty random, but like consistent triggers. Let's have a listen to what it sounds like. Let's bring the decay up on this attack decay from Nisthi. Got a little bit of modulation on this filter, courtesy of this LFO. And we're going into nebulae from Sanguine modules, which is clouds, basically. But I really like this technique because we kind of get... It's random, but it's clocked. It's just clock divisions. I'm also realizing now that I could have just switched this to trigger rather than gate, and I wouldn't have to use this module here, so a bit redundant, but whatever. It works. And then of course we can keep playing with the filter up here. We can play with the reverb up here. Let's bring the blend up. Maybe the mod depth. So I really like that as an effect. So let's move on to our final example, which is very similar to the previous one, only in this case, instead of clock divisions, we're using 3 LFOs to get a modulated gate running at different speeds. And let's just listen to what it sounds like. It's a little bit more random, certainly not clocked. Let's bring the speed up here. Oh. Going into a plateau over here. But what we're also doing is we have another trig sequencer over here and another VCA, both from Sikazel, and they are sort of modulating the output of this VCA. So we get the full volume of these triggers, or of this envelope, coming in here, but then the volume is then being modulated again over here at each time these trigs happen and this envelope is triggered. And you can see it on the scope here, what it's doing. So we get like a fade out. If I just take that out, it's much sort of harsher, I would say. But if we bring it back in, it's sort of smoother. I really like doing this with LFOs, by the way. I think I spoke about it recently on a previous video. Just modulating one LFO with another LFO with another LFO. We get some pretty cool results. It's like an obvious trick, but it's just a fun one that I like to play with. Yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to talk about for this video. There is one other module I just want to quickly call out because I think it's pretty cool. That's this Jira Jira disk. It's actually 2 modules from NIST which are like this. What's the other one called? Yeah, this one. The Echo. They're both pretty similar, I think. But this one, the Jira Jira, says it's based on a Binson Echo, which is an old tape echo device. But the cool thing about it is, and what I'm doing here, is I have another trigger sequencer, which is happening every bar, triggering this gate mod so we get a little bit of length on it. And it's just hitting this finger gate, which, if I remove that, we can hold our mouse over this and stop it, which is something you could do on old tape delays. So I'm just modulating that with another trig sequencer. So that's pretty fun. So that's kind of it. That's all I really wanted to talk about. I just love amplitude modulation. There's a lot you can do with it. Lots of different ways you can approach it. And in the middle here, you can see I've got this lineup of Debritus and VCAs all the way along. So basically, everything out of the top is going into a VCA, and then it's being modulated. The output of the VCA is being modulated heavily in different ways. And that's all you need. You just need a VCA, and you just need something to modulate it. It could be anything. But I really like these techniques. I think they're a lot of fun, and you can really transform any input. It could be anything. It could be a drum, could be pads like here, could be a sequence, it doesn't matter. It could be a modulation. Like if you wanted to have like a random modulation and then send that through a VCA and modulate that, you could totally do that. So there's like so many ways you can use this stuff. And I just think that's really exciting. So that's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. This patch will be available on patch storage for all to download for free and play around with, do whatever you like with. But yeah, give me some feedback in the comments. Let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Bye.